Pope Francis is not the first pope to sign such a letter. And since this is a modern tradition, he is actually following the footsteps of his predecessors, Pope Pius XII and Pope Paul VI.
Good day to you. Welcome to another edition of Ask a Catholic Priest. I am Dr. Jane, your anchor for this episode. We shall be discussing the circulation of the letter of resignation of Pope Francis, gaining clarity on some questions surrounding it. To discuss this with me is the very brainchild of this series, Ask a Catholic Priest. He is familiar to some as he is the spiritual director of our Catholic Community Forum, OCCF. He is a priest of the Oblates of St. Joseph on mission in Brazil. Join me as I welcome Father Chinaka Justin Mbaeri, also known as fadacjay.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. Thanks for having me in the program. And it is indeed a very wonderful opportunity to clarify our audience on another trending matter on the social media.
So, Father, there are certain questions that have been raised concerning this issue. What can you say about the resignation letter of Pope Francis that was released recently that has startled many? And of course, some have interpreted this as paving a way for another conclave soonest. What do you have to say to clarify the issue?
Thank you very much, Dr. Jane. The letter of resignation of Pope Francis should be understood in the context of a recent interview with the Spanish daily newspaper ABC. Here, Pope Francis revealed that at the beginning of his pontificate, he gave the then Secretary of State, Cardinal Bertone, a letter declaring that he would step down in the event of serious and permanent health impediments that made it impossible for him to exercise his role as Bishop of Rome and pastor of the Universal Church. In other words, Pope Francis said he wrote a conditional resignation letter in 2013 when he was elected Pope, that is, his first year in the pontificate, to be used in case he became physically or mentally impaired and unable to fulfill the duties of the papacy. Thus, in an interview published December 18, the day after his 86th birthday, Pope Francis said that during the time that Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone was Vatican Secretary of State, a petition he left in October 2013, he gave a resignation letter to the Cardinal. This is very important because the canon law does not have any provision on the grounds of resignation of the Pope, so that even if there exists a Pope eventually in the future who loses his mind or stays for a while in coma, you will just have to be patient until he dies. For since the Pope is the highest authority in the church, no one can question, appeal from, overturn his judgment, or even depose him from the chair of St. Peter, as stated in Canon 1404. But with this letter of Pope Francis, if anything happens to him that could seriously impede him from exercising his office as the Supreme Pontiff, this very letter of his takes effect immediately.
Also, you're actually saying that he took this step out of his own volition, not necessarily that it's part of the ways of the church or it has a provision in any part of the documents of the church.
Yes.
Okay, so
it lies in his prerogative to judge himself. No one could be the judge of the Pope, judge in the sense of telling the Pope what to do or trying to force him to do something or condemning the Pope. Only God is his judge. And if no one judges him in that context, it lies in his own prerogative to make provisions for something in case he is unable to do that by himself, or in case he is impeded in the future to do that himself. So while he's still hale and hearty, he already wrote a letter to cover up for any future lapses.
Okay. So let me ask, if the Pope is to step down tomorrow, that is to retire, what are the conditions to be met?
The answer to this question is clearly spelled out in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. It states, should it happen that the Roman Pontiff resigns from office, it is required for validity that the resignation be freely made and properly manifested, but it is not necessary that it be accepted by anyone. Close quote. Canon 332, Section 2. Since the College of Cardinals is the body responsible for electing a new Bishop of Rome, it seems reasonable that a resignation letter will be written to that body, as was the 2013 resignation letter of Pope Benedict XVI. Also, the language of such resignation letter itself would need to be precise. It would need to emphasize that the Pope himself freely resigned if some condition was met. It could not be seen to empower a person or a group to actually remove the Pope from office, because no one can be empowered to exercise authority over the Pope, including the power to remove him from office, as I already stated.
So whose footstep could we say Pope Francis is following in the light of this retirement letter made public?
Well, Pope Francis is not the first Pope to sign such a letter. And since this is a modern tradition, he is actually following the footsteps of his predecessors, Pope Pius XII and Pope Paul VI. Pope Pius XII signed a letter during the Second World War, which would effect his resignation if he was kidnapped by fascists during the course of the war. And Pope St. Paul VI signed a letter which would trigger his resignation in the event of unspecified health problems. So we see that he's following the footsteps of his predecessors.
Oh, that's an interesting one. He's really not the first. So, above all, do you think that Pope Francis has the strength to still continue based on the fact that he is apparently aided on a wheelchair?
Well, I recall that Pope Francis, in one of his interviews, played down his mobility issues, saying, one governs with the head, not the knee. So since the church law requires that a papal resignation be freely and properly manifested, as was the case when Benedict XVI startled the world when he announced his resignation to a gathering of prelates at the Vatican in February 2013, we cannot determine whether or not Pope Francis has the strength to continue. He knows his strength and capacity himself. And when his limits approaches, we shall hear from him. Above all, it is worth noting that in the case of both Pope Paul VI and Pope Francis, we are dealing with a preventive letter here, one that refers to situations in which the Pope finds himself unable to step down from his office freely and in full conscience. These are therefore letters that are for different circumstances compared to the one for Benedict XVI's resignation that took place almost 10 years ago. So it shouldn't be treated as though Pope Francis is intending to resign now, because this is also another rumor that people, some persons already feel that Pope Francis with this letter would be stepping down anytime soon. No, this letter was written in the very first year of his pontificate, and it was just made known to us now. So Pope Francis is still very much with us until he decides to step down.
So you're right, or he is right, by saying that he governs with his head and not his knees. And it's nice or lovely to know that the Pope is still with us up till this time, since the letter is a futuristic one. So this means that the Pope has the sole choice to actually decide based on his letter, or to put his letter into action, more or less. All right, that's an interesting one. Thank you very much, Father, for the explanations and clarifications on these issues. To you watching, thank you for listening up till this time. I hope you gained a lot. Please like and share this video to your family, friends, and all your social media pages and groups to enable people be knowledgeable on issues as this. Do subscribe and click on the notification bell so as to be the first to watch all other editions coming soon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jane, for anchoring this program. Thanks for that determination. As we've always said, that if you've got any question to ask or to discuss on this program, feel free to reach out to us and come up with your questions, and we have them clarified. And Dr. Jane has just done hers, and it was indeed an interesting engagement with her here on YouTube. So, dear friends, continue to like, share our videos, make it engaging so that YouTube would recommend our channel on YouTube so that others too come to know of our works. When you like and share this video, you are telling YouTube that it is a good video and it is worth sharing across the streets of YouTube. Thank you very much. Until we meet again on another interesting topic on Ask the Catholic Priest.
Thank you once again, Father CJ. And to you, our viewers, have a beautiful day.